Again, I'd like to thank all the people in the Tournament of Roses for what has been a wonderful week for everyone in our organization. The weather's been great. The hospitality has been fantastic. The facilities that we've had to work, whether it's the hotel, the practice area, whatever, has been, very well taken care of, and everybody has an attitude to try to please you. And I think this is probably what makes the Rose Bowl very, very special. I know somebody's going to ask me, what do you do different to get ready for this game? So before you ask me, I'm going to ask you, what do you do different to cover the game?
We'll open it up for questions.
No, I'm not finished. I just, before I got that, I just wanted to kind of put it in perspective for you so that you could kind of understand that, at this point, you want to focus on execution. You want to make things simple for the players. It's a little bit like being in the batter's box before you got to go up to the plate, 2 out in the bottom of the ninth, and you got to get a hit to win the game. What do? You go through the routine you always go through, which is what we're trying to accomplish with our players in terms of how we practiced yesterday, how we'll walk through today, the things that we'll do leading up to the game, make them as same and simple as we can, because the focus right now is on getting the best execution in the game. And I think those are the things that the players need to be able to focus on. So from an injury standpoint, I know there were some concerns yesterday because we had a couple players who were sick. Those players are better today. Everybody will go through walkthrough. If they continue to improve, they should be able to participate in the game.
Questions for Coach on the far right aisle.
Tommy Dees, Tuscaloosa News. Coach, you talk a lot about pride, discipline, commitment, toughness, and effort. How did you settle on those concepts, and when and why did you settle on those as the backbone of your program?
Well, I think that intangibles are probably really important to being a good competitor. And I think that most people who have passion for something that is important to them is what gets them to commit to something. And, your mind kind of does whatever you tell it to do. So once you have the passion and the commitment, at least you're going to be moving in the right direction when it comes to work ethic, discipline, trying to make good choices and decisions about what you do and what you don't do. And the effort, the toughness, and the discipline to execute are probably the key ingredients in any sport to, and when I say toughness, I'm talking about mental probably as much as physical, so that you can sustain and overcome adversity and persevere tough circumstances. So I think those are sort of part of your character and who you are, and I think the same ingredients would be necessary to be successful in anything.
On the far left aisle.
Coach, Eddie Pels from AP. You're sort of looking in my direction here. And to answer your question, I just take them one day at a time. What would you say is the...
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. What have been your observations about coaching in Alabama, where the sport means so much and the school has such a great tradition?
Well, I think, first of all, we have a tremendous amount of respect for the tradition and the passion that our fans have, and I think we have a tremendous amount of respect for that. But, beyond that, we sort of go about the process of things that we feel that we need to do to help our program be successful, which, is to still focus on player development personally, academically, and athletically. And everybody in our organization is there to help our players be more successful in one of those areas so that they actually have an opportunity to be more successful in life. So the rest of it really doesn't affect that. And that's what we try to do from a program standpoint. I mean, that's what affects recruiting, player development, bringing people together as a team. So the rest of it really doesn't internally affect how you try to build your team.
On the left in the middle.
Coach Saban, Andy Staples from SportsIllustrated.com. How do you feel about the idea of a coach in waiting? Is it something you'd ever consider for your program?
I don't really have an opinion about that. I think that's something that administrators need to decide if that's the best thing that they want to have to try to create continuity in a program, and I think that's probably the purpose. And I think that if you have the right chemistry in terms of who the people are that are associated with a situation like that, it could work very well. But I think if the chemistry was not correct, it may not work very well. So I think it would all be time and circumstance relative to the chemistry involved.
Middle aisle on the right.
Coach Mike Rada, ABC Birmingham. I know you're a detailed guy. You have a contingency for everything. Should something happen to Greg during the game, what's your plan? Who do you turn to?
Well, we've had A.J. McCarron has really sort of been our backup quarterback since the bye week. It's been our plan that if we had to play him, that we'll play the guy that gives us the best opportunity to win the game, and that's what we would do. Star Jackson is also an option for us, but we would make the decision on. You don't get, we've gotten this far, so I think in fairness to everyone, we would put the guy in the game that would give us the best opportunity to win. And if the person who has sort of been the backup quarterback needs to do that because he's performed the best, practiced the best, and put himself in that position, I'm pretty certain that that's the direction that we would go in.
Front row on the right.
Chase Goodbread, Tuscaloosa News. Coach, William Vlahos mentioned the other day, we asked him why he thinks Rolando McClain's a special player. He said because he can play through blocks or around blocks. Most linebackers, he said, can only do one or the other. How common is it to have a linebacker that can play the blocks both ways?
Well, I think that, William Vlahos is probably a pretty good evaluator of linebackers because really you have two sort of types of guys that play that position. Guys that are fast flow, slip blocks, I call it, type of guys to get to where they need to be. Then you have guys that are big enough and powerful enough to actually use their hands, take on people, hold the point, shed the blocker, and be able to make the play. And it probably is pretty unique to have guys who can do both. And that's what we look for in our inside backers, and we were very fortunate to have two at the beginning of the year because Dante Hightower can do the same thing. But I think that's what makes Rowe an outstanding player is he has the athleticism, the speed, the mobility, and the power to do both.
Far right on the aisle.
Brett Tannehill, Alabama Public Radio. Could you give us your perspective on concussion safety and how the approach to that has evolved or maybe hasn't changed from your days when you first became a head coach to now?
Well, I think the technology medically is a lot better today in terms of the tests they give, and I can't really sort of give you the technical perspective on it from a medical standpoint, but I know that we give our players tests, and we know that, when those tests get to a certain point, then, they're able to have activity, and when they get to a certain other point, they're allowed to go back and have contact. And we continue to test them to make sure they're not having reoccurring symptoms. So I feel like the technology is a lot better now than it used to be relative to these tests, and these are all things to me that are medical decisions. As a coach, we never get involved in whether a player should practice, shouldn't practice, or whatever. I mean, whatever the medical staff determines that a guy should do is what we support and want to do. When concussions occur, I think to have a good baseline of a history of a guy as well as these pretty accurate tests are a real asset to making determinations about concussions.
Third row.